morning, everyone! Welcome to In Layman's Terms, the show where we take an abnormally big concept and try to boil it down for you. Today's episode is on women, their objectification, and where it apparently all started, Greek myth. So, you guys ready for this? Because we're going to be looking at one of the biggest Greek myths that's often told in schools today. The story of Demeter and Persephone. You ready? Here we go. Our story begins with Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, and her daughter Persephone. Now, Persephone is out playing in the field one day, and for some flying frickin' reason, a giant chasm opens up and she falls right in. Persephone finds herself in the underworld, home of Hades himself, and also as such, mired by Persephone's beauty, instantly falls in love with her, and also decides that he wants to marry her on the spot. Demeter, understandably frantic, goes straight up to Zeus, seeing that he might help her with her problem. The thing is, though, Zeus reveals to Demeter that Hades wants to marry Persephone. And also, apparently, he also said, yeah, sure, and basically signed off on the whole thing. To say Demeter was pissed was an understatement. She storms out of Mount Olympus and decides to live among the mortals for a while, because apparently... Now, during this time, she tries to get her daughter back, but no avail. Demeter starts to enter into a great depression, and since she is the goddess of the harvest, food stops growing. Meanwhile, back in the underworld, Persephone herself struggles to acclimate to her new environment, and most importantly, she's refusing to eat. Hades, noticing this, decides to give her 6 seeds of a pomegranate from one of his orchids. She absentmindedly eats it out of pure hunger for a cost. See, per Olympian law, if a being ate food from a different realm, they now belong in that realm. Persephone is now trapped in the underworld, and Demeter still hasn't done her job, and now crops are refusing to grow. Zeus, understanding that he needs man to pray to him, realizes Demeter wants her daughter back, and as such, sends Hermes to negotiate with his brother Hades. Hermes comes back with bad news. Persephone ate food in the underworld, and now Hades owns her like a piece of property. Persephone learns that she is now a prisoner of the underworld and pleads with Hades to let her come back to her mother. Hades refuses. That is, until Hermes arrived with another message from Zeus. They broker a deal. Persephone will be allowed to visit the surface world exactly 1/4 of the year, but the other 3 she has to be with Hades. Demeter, reunited with her daughter, is elated. The crops start to grow, and now mankind has actual food to eat. But when Persephone returns to Hades, Demeter goes back into that depression, and the crops wither away and die. And thus, the cycle keeps continuing. The story of Demeter and Persephone is an often story that tells the story of the seasons. When Persephone is down in the underworld, Demeter would cause all the ground to shrivel up and die, hence fall and winter, and when Persephone again joins her, it's now spring and summer. However, I did not bring you here to discuss a story on the seasons. I brought you here to discuss a much darker story. A story of what Demeter and Persephone really truly embody. Because really think about it through the entire story. Persephone gets kidnapped, or falls, or whatever. She winds up in the underworld. A man looks up on her, finds her amazing beauty, decides he wants to marry her right off. Woman protests, and woman loses. That's the ultimate story. And woman goes into basically the biggest epic hunger strike ever, and decides to say, okay, I'm just going to let all the crops die until I see my daughter. That's the whole story of Demeter and Persephone. This is a story on abuse. This is a story on how men, throughout this entire thing, has always assumed that a woman is a plaything to them. And this comes up a lot. In fact, in one version of the story, Hades is the one that comes up to the surface world, finds Persephone and says, my God, what a lovely maiden. She is mine. Kidnaps her right there. In another story, and this is true by the way, the god of the sea, Poseidon, decides to say, I got bored one day. I want to fuck my sister Demeter. And so she hides herself as a mare. He turns himself into a stallion, finds her, and they fuck. Literally, that's part of the story. That's part of one of the original stories. And then in a third one, you know when I said that Zeus basically signed her off? Yeah, big detail. Zeus is Persephone's father. So you get to this point in where Zeus basically says, yeah, Persephone is a toy I get to play with. Which is not true. She's not a toy. She's a living god. I know it doesn't sound as great as a living human being because we're human beings and they're gods, but she's alive. And so I wanted to bring you here to discuss one truly magnificent opportunity. And that opportunity is to learn. This Greek myth, and this is true, was taught to me in 7th grade. Yeah, 7th. And when I learned it in 7th grade, I thought, like many of you, that it was a simple season story. Oh, that's interesting. 9th grade, I took a look at it, and then I understood its complications. The whole notion of women belonging to the man, being an object to the man's whims, happens over and over and over again throughout our history. It wasn't until 1910 that women got the ability to vote. And it wasn't until 1964 that women of color got the ability to get a job. It wasn't until the 1970s that society started warming up. And it wasn't until 2016 that a woman finally got to the chance of nearly being elected president. It also wasn't until 2016 that we finally got a female superhero that just premiered. But I do want to leave you guys with a good note. The tide is changing. Women are not objects, they're not toys, they're not this asinine thing that you can model and control. They're living people with dignity, with respect, and quite frankly, are awesome. So in layman's terms, the story of Demeter and Persephone is in fact a story of how women should be viewed as objects, how it's echoed throughout history, how we constantly kept putting up with it even though one of our presidents now advocates that you can grab a pussy. My name is Max Malik, and I'll see you guys next time.